Morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the payroll update webinar for 2023. Hopefully you'll find some of the news interesting. There's not too many developments from last year, so a lot of it might just be a recap over the past 12 months and a look ahead to see what might be coming in and things to consider when processing the payroll. So my name's Phil. I head up the payroll team here. Some of you may well know me already. As we're going along, if you do have any questions, please pop them in the chat. And we will try and answer them at the end. If we don't have time, what we'll do is we'll follow up with a call or an email. So let's get started. So on the agenda today, so like I said, we're going to have a recap of 2022. There was a lot of ups and downs with the payroll changes, specifically in national insurance, so we'll have a look at them. The new rates and thresholds from April 23. We'll also have a look at payroll and benefits, which has been around for a number of years, but we're just going to cover off what that entails and the benefits of that. Going to have a look at holiday ruling again, something that we touched upon last year in the update session, but we're going to cover it off because the rules are forever changing and it's something to keep an eye on. We'll then have a look at national minimum wage. We've had a few inquiries through recently on that. It's not just about making sure that we're paying the right rates from April, there's other considerations, so we'll go into a bit more detail there. And then finally wrapping up, we'll have a look at upcoming events that we're holding for the remainder of the year. So recap of 2022. So last year, from the 6th of April 22, we had the Health and Social Care Levy being introduced. That was an extra 1.25% being added on to the Class 1 national insurance. So the 12% national insurance went to 13.25%. And then above the upper earnings level, it went to 3.25% from 2%. The employer's national insurance also increased from 13.8% to 15.05%. That quickly, that has now been reversed, as you can see on the timeline here. From the 6th of November, that was scrapped. But prior to that, on the 6th of July, we also had another national insurance change where the primary threshold increased to £12,570. That was in line with the tax threshold, and that is still in place. 6th of September 2022, Liz Truss became Prime Minister, and like I say, one of the first things she looked to introduce was to scrap the Health and Social Care Levy. So that reversed it from 13.25% employee to 12%. And same again from 3.25% to 2%, and the employer is the same. But what does this mean for your payroll year end? So when you come to run your payroll for month 12, there are some considerations that you need to look out for. So how does this affect your normal employees? So standard employees, they'll have been calculated at the rate of national insurance in the period that they were being paid for. So for example, in April, they would have paid 13.25% employers' national insurance on any earnings above the £9,880 in the year. That would have then changed throughout the course of the year as and when the changes were implemented. For directors or employees that are paid on an annual basis, that has changed. They have got prorated allowances for this year. So because of the rate changes from 9,880 to 12,570, the primary threshold has been averaged out for annual earners to 11,908. Same with the employee class 1 NIC threshold. The percentages have gone from 12% and 13.25% and averaged out at 12.73% and 2.73%. The employees class 1 national insurance has also been averaged at 14.53%. Something to consider as well for those that have benefits in kind that are submitted on a PLMD or a payroll, which we'll cover off later. The class 1A national insurance threshold rate this time is going to be 14.53%, not 13.8%. Next year it will be back to 13.8. So tax bandings. So you'll see here there's not an awful lot of movement on this. This was expected. Last year they had actually frozen the tax bandings for a couple of years, but that's now been extended to April 2028. So for the next 5 years, these are going to be fixed. So we've got 1257L as the personal allowance. Again, that was the same from last year. The basic rate tax banding at 20%, so that's up to 37,700. The higher rates at which you pay 40%, that has now actually come down, so from 150,000 to 125,140, and additional rate 45%. is again in line with that. So that's anything over £125,140 in a year is taxed at 45%. So national insurance thresholds. So again, not an awful lot of change here. There was quite a lot of change throughout 2022, but since the changes came in from from July, these are now fixed. So you'll see here from April 2022 to the 5th of July, it was 9880 for the primary threshold. That increased to 12570. Sorry, my lights have just gone out. To 12570, and that is now remaining the same for 23-24. As with the basic rate tax threshold, so it's staying the same until April 2028. That is also remaining the same for the national insurance. So these are going to be fixed again for the next 5 years. So if you think there's been few changes this year in terms of the payroll update, then the next 5 are also going to be pretty dull. So just to go through what some of these levels mean. So the lower earnings level, the LEL, is the rate at which you need to be earning in order to qualify for your state pension and other statutory payments such as SSP and SNP. The primary threshold is the rate at which before you pay employees national insurance. The secondary threshold is the rate which before you pay employers national insurance, and the upper earnings level is when you go to the 2% national insurance rate. Okay, so national minimum wage. So we have seen quite a significant increase in these this year. You'll see 23 and over has gone from £9.50 to £10.42. That's a 9.7% increase. 21 to 22, that's a 10.9% increase to £10.18. 18 to 20, again another 9.7% increase to £7.49. And under 18s and the apprentices rate for anyone under 19 or in the first year of their apprenticeship has been increased by 9.8% to £5.28. What we are expecting to see from next year is that the national living wage rate, which is 23 and over, is actually going to be aligned with the 21 and over rate. So here, where we've got £10.42 for 23 and over, we would expect, although that will increase next year, we'd anticipate these two being the same. So it will get rid of that banding altogether. Not yet confirmed, but that is the talk and what we're expecting to see. So student loan thresholds, these have increased again, quite significant increases here for some. So for Plan 1, we've got a £2,000 increase to 22015. Plan 2 is remaining the same. Plan 4 has actually increased ever so slightly, and postgraduate has remained the same. The rate at which they're paid is the same as it always has been, so it's 9% for Plan 2, 1, 2 and 4, and postgraduate is 6%. So having a look at the statutory payment rates. So again, these have increased quite considerably. So where last year SSP was paid at £99.35, that's now £109.40 per week. Same with the SNP and SPP rates. They've gone up considerably from £156.66 per week to £172.48. And again, it's just a reminder for those that are processing the payroll, if somebody's earnings are below the LEL, they won't be entitled to any of these payments, and also if their earnings are below these statutory amounts, then but are eligible for maternity, then they'll be paid at 90% of their average weekly earnings. So that sort of covers off all the changes really for the new year that you need to think about. The next section of the updates really is just to go through what things you could be looking out for payroll, what things are going to be being introduced over the next few years, and just sort of that extra what you could be doing to try and streamline your processes internally. So for example, the first one we're going to have a look at is payroll and benefits in kind. So again, this has been around for a number of years. The uptake hasn't been great, and we'll go into some of the reasons for that. But basically, the payroll and benefits in kind, what is it? It means that you don't have to submit P11Ds anymore. All benefits are then processed through payroll, meaning that employees are paying tax in real time. Again, why should you payroll the benefits? So you can say goodbye to P11D. So if that's something that you currently have in house, and you do them yourselves, you can appreciate it's quite a time admin burden that you have to do every year. That if you could put them into your payroll, it's freeing up that time come sort of post April when you're having to submit them. Again, employees are paying tax in real time, so rather than their tax code being adjusted in the following year, they're able to see on their payslip exactly what benefits they've got, and they're paying that month by month or week by week, however they get paid. What should happen eventually is once all the benefits have been brought up to date, so if they do have got anything in their code, the following year you should expect to see their personal allowance go back to 1257L or whatever the personal allowance will be ongoing. So again, it gives more clarity in terms of what their pay is, rather than looking at a pay slip and them having an adjusted tax code, them not understanding exactly what's in there. At least with everything showing on the pay slip, with them having a full personal allowance at 1257L, everything's clear on there. So what benefits can be payrolled? So anything can be payrolled, with the exception of employer-provided living accommodation and interest-free and low-interest beneficial loans. So if you've got any other benefits, whether that be medical, car, van, fuel, they're the sort of standard ones, they can all be payrolled, except, like I say, the living accommodation and interest-free loans. So if you're interested in payroll and benefits, what do you need to do? So you need to have registered by the start of the tax year that you're looking to pay all the benefits from. So obviously we've not got long left, a couple of weeks. You'd have to register by the 5th of April 23 if you want to pay all your benefits from 23-24. You would still need to submit your P11Ds for the year ended 5th of April 2023, but obviously from next year that burden will be reduced. Just a note on the payroll and benefits: if you do decide to pay all your benefits ongoing, you do still need to submit P11DB, which notifies the revenue of what Class 1A national insurance is due on the benefits. Again, we would like to think that that's going to become something that can be paid through payroll, because Class 1A national insurance is actually something that can be paid through payroll if it's a termination payment, for example, or it's for sports testimonials. They are something that do appear in payroll. They've just not brought through the benefit in kind side of it yet. So it's something that probably will happen over the next few years, we'd expect, because again, it means that the revenue are getting their Class 1A national insurance on a month-by-month basis, rather than we're having to wait till the end of the year. This isn't something that's mandatory as yet, again, but we do expect this to be mandatory. Like I say, the revenue will want the tax in real time. They won't want to have to be waiting a year for the tax on these benefits. So what else do you need to do as an employer? So like I say, you need to register by the start of the tax year. You'd also need to write out to all your employees notifying them what it means, so that the benefits are going to be payrolled ongoing, that they're going to pay tax in real time. This can either be done via a letter, on an email, or actually on the pay slips to notify them. And written communication needs to be given to all the employees by the 1st of June after the end of each tax year. On there, you need to confirm the details of the benefits you've payrolled, the amount you've payrolled for optional remuneration, details of the benefits you haven't payrolled. So just say you've got some company cars, but you've also got some employer-provided living accommodation. You would still need to submit a P11D for that living accommodation, but not for the company cars. So you have to write to them to explain that P11D is being submitted for the accommodation benefit, but not for the car benefit. And then also, as I said, you need to submit the P11DB, advising HMRC what Class 1A national insurance is due on the benefits. And as always, they need to be submitted by the 6th of July. So moving on to holiday pay. This is something, again, many of you may well be aware of, but I just thought I'd cover it off because it's still something when we're speaking with clients, it's something that people either aren't aware of, or they're not sure whether it is legislation yet, and so whether they need to act on it. So I just thought I'd cover it off again, just so people are aware. So previous rules for holiday. So statutory minimum holiday entitlement for most employees is 5.6 weeks. That's stayed the same, and that includes bank holidays. So if you work 5 days a week, your minimum entitlement would be 28 days. That could be made up of 20 days plus 8 bank holiday. For employees on shift work or no fixed hours, an average of their previous 12 weeks used to be taken to calculate what their average pay would be for holiday calculation purposes. So if it was regular, that would include overtime, commission and bonuses. It wouldn't include one-off payments or irregular overtime. So what's changed? So in July 2017, the independent Taylor Review of Modern Working Practices recommended extending the holiday pay reference period from 12 weeks to 52 weeks. And in December 2018, the Good Work Plan was accepted by government, with the changes becoming effective in April 2020. So again, this has been a number of years this has been in place. So it is more of a recap as this. So why the change? So why did they change it from a 12-week period to a 52-week period? So if you think about it from for employees who are, say, casual or seasonal staff, by changing it to a 52-week period, it better reflects employees whose hours fluctuate throughout the year. So if somebody if people are busy over Christmas, for example, but then decide to take their holidays in the summer, it's then not, if based on the 12-week period, it wouldn't be accounting for the extra hours that they've worked over the festive period. So it's to try and make it fair for employees. And it's also to stop employees from encouraging workforce to take holidays before busy periods. So again, for the same reason where employers might be a bit tactical and think, right, well, actually it would be cheaper for them to take the holidays now because they're not going to have accrued lots of overtime at this point. It will abandon that because you're always looking at that 52-week period. If you haven't got a 52-week period to go off, because these are 52 worked weeks and not everybody works every single week, you can go back up to 104 weeks to find a true 52 weeks of worked periods. I've put a note on here. I'm not going to go into it in great detail just because of the length that it would take, and also it is more of a HR query. So if you have got any, if you do go away and have a look at this and have got any questions, by all means drop me an email and we can point you in the right direction. But it is more of an employment law case. But a case study to go and have a look at is the Harbour Trust v Brazil case, which actually got a result in 2022. And what that did is that it showed that entitlement to holiday pay under the Working Time Regulations 1998 does not need to be prorated for part-year workers. So if an employee isn't employed for a full year and is part-time, they argue that you don't have to prorate their holiday entitlement for that part year. You still need to do it based on a true average. Again, I've just put it in here just so you can go away and do some research on that. Feel free to drop me a line. We can have a chat on that separately. So what should I do? 52-week period will work in a similar way to the current 12-week period. Employees should count back 52 weeks from the last time the worker worked and was paid. Any weeks that the employee did not work or receive pay should be excluded, and you can go back, like I say, a maximum of 104 weeks to get that 52 whole weeks of pay. And if there's fewer than 52 weeks, obviously you just use the whole weeks available. Probably the biggest concern on this, and the one that we found, is software. You don't want to be relying on Excel spreadsheets to monitor this and to manage this, and it's just whether the software can cope for this. We've found generally systems aren't great, and so there is an element of Excel work needed to go into it. But if you have got a HR system in place, or we process your payroll, have a word with us, have a word with your your software provider, because there are things that you can put in place. So finally, what we'll do is we'll cover off the national minimum wage common pitfalls. Obviously, we went through the rate changes earlier on in the presentation, but this is just sort of going to go through some of the common pitfalls that we found and that the revenue are picking employers up on, and to really again just highlight what the potential penalties are for employers that are failing to pay the minimum wage, because like I say, it isn't just a simple case of making sure somebody gets paid in this year £9.50 an hour. So employers that fail to pay workers at least the national minimum wage must pay back any underpayments owed to the employee. That would be as expected. However, potential fines are up to 200% of the underpayment, capped at £20,000 per employee. So if this underpayment's been going on for a number of years, and it goes up to £20,000 per employee, you could have to pay a fine of up to that to the revenue. Some of the common areas where people fall down with paying national minimum wage where they're not necessarily aware is by making wage deductions or taking payments from workers for the employee's own benefit. So an example of that would be, just say it's a retail shop, and there are goods and services that can be bought from the shop. So it might be work for a coffee shop and you are purchasing coffee from that shop. Even if you're getting that at a discounted rate from the company, if they're taking that out of your wage to pay for, say, a bag of coffee, if that takes you below minimum wage, that classes as a deduction from national minimum wage, and therefore you're underpaying the staff. So the way around that would be to make sure that payments are being made in full, and that the employee is then sending the money back to the employer for any goods that they're purchasing. Salary sacrifice deductions as well. So for anyone who isn't aware, salary sacrifice deductions are gross deductions that reduce the taxable and nickable pay. There's only a few things really that can be truly salary sacrifice now: childcare vouchers, pensions, just to name a few. If somebody is in a salary sacrifice scheme and that deduction takes them to below minimum wage, again, they will be falling foul of minimum wage rules, and there will be a potential underpayment there, and then again, penalties could be due. Employees that have travelling time, so if have to travel to a different site to work, failure to pay for that travelling time could result in minimum wage, paying below minimum wage. Failure to pay work for any time during their shift when they are at the workplace and required to be available for work. So the common one here is if you've got in the contract to say that you start at 9 o'clock but we need you on site at 8:45 ready to work, they should be getting paid from 8:45. And if that is expected, even if it's not in the contract, but it's expected of them, it would be argued that their true starting time is 8:45, and therefore they should be paid for that 15 minutes. Failure to pay work for any time spent training. So if an employee is on training but isn't getting paid for it, again, minimum wage rules apply. And failure to apply the annual increase to minimum wage rates from 1st of April, so the ones that we've just gone through. The final one here, we've got failure to pay sufficient money for any time worked during sleep-ins as well. If any of them are sort of ringing bells for you, or you're not sure of anything, come and speak to me after. Drop us a message in the Q&A, and we'll pick it up sort of the individual cases with you. And that's pretty much it for the payroll update. Like I say, there wasn't too many changes this year. A lot of it was just a recap over last year, how that's going to impact on your year end, and just some things to be aware of when processing your payroll over the next 12 months. So I'm just going to leave you finally with some upcoming events. First of all, as some of you may be aware, each year we pick a charity to support. This year all staff voted for East Lancashire Hospice, and as part of that we're taking part in the corporate challenge that they have every year. For my part, I'm doing a 30-hour karaoke event on the 21st and 22nd of April. It's going to be held at Blues Bar, and we're going to have a few different events throughout, and people are more than welcome to come and get involved. So we've got a business networking event on the launch. That's Friday 21st, so that's 8:30 start until about 10:30 with breakfast. We've got the karaoke evening from 7:30 again at Blues Bar, and that will be till close, so about midnight, where people can come down, have a few drinks, have a pie and peas supper, and help me sing a few songs. And then sort of 24 hours in, the next day, there's going to be a karaoke kids club, so any parents that want to come down, we've got face painted games on. I'll still be singing, so that's on the morning of the 22nd. For more details on all of them, you can get that on our website. I've put a link down there. Sort of on a more serious note, we've got the opportunities for selling a business in the current climate, and that's being held and run by Steve Bell, our Corporate Finance Director, on Thursday the 27th of April, and it'll be a webinar. Again, you can book onto that on the link below. If you haven't got any questions, please put them in the chat, and we'll come back to you on it. But otherwise, I hope you have a nice day, and yeah, I'll see you next year. Thank you. Bye.